Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the No Silicast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. Today is Sunday, October 26, 2025, and this is show number 1068. Well, last week the live audience had to wait quite a while for the start of the show because I was having a very odd audio problem. As you know, I use a lot of products from Rogue Amoeba, and they're awesome. And the problem seemed to be somewhere in the interaction between these tools and macOS Tahoe. The problem was that I could pipe the audio from my mic alone into StreamYard for the YouTube audience and for Discord for the live chat room, but I could not pipe both my mic and the audio playback from Hindenburg into the two live audience experiences. That meant they could hear me when I was just talking, but I couldn't play anything back for them. This setup has been working for several years, so I kind of suspected that macOS Tahoe had broken something. I wrote an email to the Rogue Amoeba folks, and the response I got back from Aaron made me really happy. Now, don't get too excited. We haven't fixed the problem yet. Here's why it made me happy. I started my email by giving him a little table of all of the apps I'm using from Rogue Amoeba with their version numbers, along with the fact that I'm running macOS 26.0.1. Then I gave a short paragraph overview of the problem. After that, I inserted screenshots of each of the apps from Rogue Amoeba and how I have them configured. You may have noticed that I'm fond of taking screenshots, and yes, these had nice rounded borders on them. And Rogue Amoeba also has a support article about a known bug in macOS 26 that causes lost audio, and it's related to mismatches in audio sample rates. I told Aaron that I'd read the article, and I gave him screenshots of every audio input source, whether real or virtual, showing that everyone was set to a sample rate of 48 kilohertz. I gave him the steps I followed to test, and showed him that I tested in different audio recording apps like Hindenburg and QuickTime to ensure it wasn't a problem with the live show tools. Now you get to hear why Aaron made me so happy. Here's what he wrote back. Thank you so much for the incredibly thorough write-up and documentation you sent over. You did a fantastic job explaining your setup and the exact steps you've taken so far. I can't say enough how helpful that is. Made my job incredibly easy to follow what's happening. Well, what do you think of that, huh? Anyway, he talked some more about some tests that he wanted me to run and some log files to collect, and he ended his email with, "Thanks again for such an excellent and detailed report. It's genuinely appreciated." I gotta tell you, I felt so great hearing that response. I don't think anyone's ever given me so much praise for doing this much work to be clear and concise. I don't need to be patted on my little pumpkin head all the time, but it sure felt good. Now, I kind of feel like this is what we should all be doing to make their job better, to be able to understand what the problem is. Anyway, like I think I said at the beginning, I have a workaround for now that I developed, but I look forward to a solution soon from Aaron and the awesome team at Rogue Amoeba. A few weeks ago, I taught you some of the basics of Markdown in a written article, but if you learn better from a video tutorial, I have just the thing for you. My tutorial for ScreenCastsOnline was just published, and it's all about Markdown. I teach you the basics of Markdown syntax while demonstrating using apps like Typora, BB Edit with the help of Marked, and more. I teach how to export to Markdown from Notes, and I even demonstrate how some messaging apps support Markdown now. It's not a long tutorial, but I packed in a lot. If you're not yet a member of ScreenCastsOnline, you can get a free 7-day trial and watch my Markdown tutorial at ScreenCastsOnline.com. When you're done watching my tutorial, you can watch all of the current back catalog. I hope you'll go check it out. I don't mean to tease you, but in a few weeks, you'll get to hear a really fun conversation Bart and I had about how he's approaching AI. As will come at no shock to anyone, he starts from a position of privacy. We've already recorded this conversation, but I'm saving it for a week when we're going to be out of town. I want to make sure you have enough content for a full show when we're gone, and that's going to be part of it. However, this week we also recorded kind of the flip side about how Bart's using AI, and that's how he uses it in his coding. This recording is in the Programming by Stealth feed, but it's what we like to kind of call a tidbit episode. These are episodes that aren't part of the greater theme of learning to program, but rather standalone segments of interest to the programming community. If this sounds interesting, you can find the episode in your podcatcher of choice by searching for Programming by Stealth, or you can find it at the link in the show notes to pbs.bartificer.net, where, of course, the whole thing is in a fabulous written tutorial. This one is called Tidbit 14 of Why, Coding with AI. You may remember way back in 2008 when Bart Buchatz taught us about site-specific browsers. A site-specific browser is kind of what it says on the tin. It's a browser designed to go to one specific site. We'll go through how site-specific browsers can be created, and I'll explain what problems can be solved along the way. We're going to first look at a way Apple provides, and then I'm going to tell you about a more advanced method using a tool called Unite by developer Benjamin Goldman from BZG Apps. With the advent of so many web-based services, it's convenient to create a site-specific browser that opens just one website as though it was a real app. Apple allows you to do this on the iPhone with the Add to Home Screen option under the Share button. With the introduction of macOS Sonoma, you've been able to do the same thing from Safari by going to File, Add to Dock. I'll use my elapsed time adder web app that I built and maintain over on GitHub server as an example. The URL isn't pretty at all. It's https://podfeed.github.io/time-adder. Now, remembering that might be kind of hard. After navigating there and choosing Add to Dock, I'm invited to change the name of the new app. By default, Safari sees the page name as a web app to add time. I can change that to elapsed time adder, which makes more sense to me. I don't have a favicon for this site yet, so the app's icon will be a generic W. Once added to the dock, this also creates an app inside your user-level applications folder. So not one that's available to all users of your Mac. It's not in the main applications folder. You could move it there, though, if you like. The resulting web app is kind of halfway between an app and a web page. It doesn't necessarily have a URL bar at the top, so it looks more like an app than a browser. But it does have buttons for any plugins you have installed in Safari. In mine, I could see 1Password, Keyword Search, Velia, and Grammarly, along with the share icon. The window also has a forward and back button, which makes sense, since you may navigate around while using this little web app. But here's where Apple's implementation of site-specific browsers breaks down. Remember that my elapsed time adder web app is hosted at podfeet.github.io. Well, I have another web app hosted on GitHub, and that's my time shifter clock. Its URL is also at podfeet.github.io, but after that you write time-shifter-clock. If I click on a link to Time Shifter Clock app, it won't open in my normal browser. It will open in my elapsed time adder web app that I just finished creating by Safari. So I've got the Time Shifter Clock open, but when I look in the URL bar, it says elapsed time adder. That's because they have the same base URL. Now, this example might have been too esoteric. I mean, it's kind of all about me. So let me give you one you might actually run into. Imagine you've got a Google Sheet you work in all the time. It'd be handy to have a web app for that sheet. Once you create it using Apple's Add to Dock, all links to all Google Docs from any source will open in that site-specific browser. That kind of makes the Add to Dock web app pretty much useless for that kind of tool. You also can't be logged into two different accounts at the same time with a Safari-created site-specific browser. If you have a work account and a play account for Google, you'd want them to be independent site-specific browsers, and you can't do that with Apple's Add to Dock. And that brings us to why I turned to Unite from BZG Apps. This is an app that is purpose-built to help you create site-specific browsers. It's only $30 for a solo license, and that's for just one Mac. If you need a license for more than one Mac, you can get the Pro version for $50. Or if you want to have fun for the whole family, the $90 family license will give you a license for 5 Macs. Unite requires macOS 12 Monterey or later. Now here's the other thing. If you're a SetApp user, you'll be glad to know that Unite is also available with your existing subscription. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Kurt Liebezeit told me about Unite 2 years ago. He even offered to do a review, but the new feature of Add to Dock had just been introduced in Sonoma, and we thought Unite had been Sherlocked. But like most examples of Sherlocking, Apple makes a minor feature available to all, but dedicated apps often have capabilities far beyond that simple offering. And most No Silicastaways keep security front of mind, and we're not fond of how websites leak data through the use of cookies. In the BZG Apps support article entitled Understanding Privacy in Unite, there's a section on app isolation that I'd like to quote. It says, each Unite app operates independently, providing a layer of isolation from other apps. This approach prevents the possibility of cross-app data leakage and ensures the safety of your data. I like that. They also explain on that page that Unite apps are based on WebKit the same browser engine that powers Safari. They chose WebKit because of its security, performance, and compliance with standards. Unite apps even come with their own built-in password manager, and they explain in the same article how it's secured. You can toggle it off if you're not interested in using it. When you first launch the Unite app, you'll see suggestions for 6 pre-built web apps. As of the time I'm writing this article, the suggestions are for ChatGPT, YouTube, Duolingo, X, Gmail, and WhatsApp. In the upper right, there's a button that says See All, which reveals a giant list of pre-built web apps. I was too lazy to count them myself, so I asked ChatGPT, and it said there were 97 apps listed. Now, it turns out Steve Matten saw my article, and he wasn't too lazy to count them himself. And as seems to be more and more frequent, it turns out the AI assistant lied to me. There are 84 pre-built apps. Now, luckily, they are helpfully sorted into categories of AI, social media, entertainment, messaging, storage and file sharing, productivity documents, finance and production markets, shopping, and finally, learning and writing. I highly recommend you take a look through these pre-built web apps before constructing your own. You might just find the one you want to create is already in the list. Let's start by creating a ChatGPT app with Unite since it's right there in the front page of suggestions. On the Create Applications page, you'll see the name ChatGPT has been added, along with the URL of chat.openai.com. We can edit these fields, and I would suggest as a best practice adding the word Unite to the title. I find it useful from time to time to tell my real apps from my Unite apps. Note that all Unite apps will be in your real applications folder, not your user-level applications folder. Now you'll see the ChatGPT icon to the left of this main screen with a Customize button, which lets you choose from the default flat icon to a rounded rectangle or a circle with some depth. If this was an app you were creating from scratch, you might want to make your own icon or copy it from somewhere, so Unite lets you do that by browsing your Mac for an appropriate image file. Now, there's a lot more we can do in creation of our Unite app for ChatGPT, but let's just use the Create Application button and see how it looks right out of the box. After a second or two, you'll be told your application was successfully created, and you'll be invited to launch it now. When your ChatGPT Unite app opens, you'll see the familiar left sidebar for ChatGPT and the Ask Anything text field in the middle. But you'll notice it doesn't really look like a web page. It has the red, yellow, green buttons in the top left, but there's no URL bar at the top. In the top right, you'll see 3 tiny little icons. The first button will unfold or fold back up the URL bar. Sometimes you do need it, but it's also nice to have a clean interface. The next button is to open a vertical tab sidebar. Since this is a proper web browser, there will be times you'd like to have tabs. If you don't enable the sidebar, they'll be across the top like a traditional browser. The final button opens some settings, but I'm going to circle back to those in a little bit. I do have some bad news, and it's that all of the buttons I've just described are simply labeled button if you're using a screen reader. So that's all you're going to hear if you're using VoiceOver. The share button, add a tab button, and refresh button in the URL bar are also labeled button. Even worse, the stoplight buttons, home, back, and forward buttons are impossible to even navigate to with VoiceOver. I thought maybe our screen reader friends could live without those buttons, but all of the settings for the entire app are labeled button as well. I've gotten to know the developer pretty well over the past few months as I've been studying this app, and I sent him a note about the lack of accessibility with the hope that he'll make it a high priority. He wrote back. He said, "Yes, this is a good catch. I'm currently working on the next major version of Unite and will try to do better on this front as we reevaluate the overall architecture." Now, if I hear on the next version that Unite is accessible with a screen reader, I'll be sure to let you know. All right. Unite apps can be presented in 3 distinctly different views. The default is the normal view, where the app is a regular-looking window on your Mac. I mentioned a little settings button in the upper right. From the settings button, you can change normal to status bar view or compact view. Status bar view changes the entire app into a menu bar app. And not every app will do well in this mode, but ChatGPT in particular is the kind of app you might want to jump into, ask a quick question, and then get back to work. Compact View does what it says on the tin. It opens in a very small window. The size isn't really the magical part because if you drag the corner to embiggen it, the size is remembered even if you quit and reopen. Compact View's real power is that the window floats above all other apps. Now, that would get on my nerves after a while, but I can definitely see sometimes where I'd like a persistent window to perform certain tasks, so it's nice you can toggle that on and off. After you've created an app, you can go back to Unite and edit the design. First, quit the app, then launch Unite. Under the suggested apps to build, you'll now see recently added, and your first app should be listed there. In my example, it's called ChatGPT Unite. If you hover over the newly created app, you'll see a downward chevron appear on the far right. When selected, the top option is to edit. But from there, we could also uninstall apps from this little pop-up window. It's not hard to go to the applications folder and delete an app, but it's cleaner to do it from this window because any, leftover associated files could confuse Unite if you make a new app for the same service. We can also launch the app, reveal it in Finder, or export the application. This will create a .unite config file that you can share or use on another Unite licensed Mac. If we select Edit, we're taken back to the same screen that we saw when we were creating the app. If I had one complaint about Unite, it's that the window size can't be increased, and there's a lot of info on each page. For the show notes, I created a scrolling screenshot so you could see all of the options at the same time. Now, the first option is App Tabs, and I'll come back to that because it's super cool. The second section is App Mode, which almost correlates with the view options we looked at earlier, like Normal Mode, Menu Bar App, and Compact Mode. But it also has an option for Sidebar App. Sidebar apps have a vertical tab list down the left or right side. In a normal view app, remember we had a button at the top to reveal and hide the URL bar, but with a Sidebar app, that option disappears. You'll only see an icon to hide and reveal the sidebar. But if you hide the sidebar with that button, it reveals the URL bar and changes your tab to take on the traditional horizontal positions. If you're an Arc fan or you favor using plugins like tree-style tabs to get vertical tabs, you may want to experiment with making sidebar apps. Next on the Edit Application window are 3 options to modify the behavior of your shiny new app. You'll see link forwarding, block ads, and window style. Window style is easy to explain. It's just dark mode versus light mode versus auto to follow your system style. Block ads is also self-explanatory. It's a simple toggle from off to on. Link forwarding is a bit more complex. Link forwarding allows you to be in control of how links are handled in your app. Do you want your app to open links within the app if they're to other services, or would you rather have them open in your default web browser? Now remember, sometimes you're trying to keep these services from knowing about each other, so it might be good to have it back in your default web browser. Maybe do you want them to open as background tabs, new windows, or maybe even replace the current tab? In the Edit Application setup, you'll see that link forwarding is on, but there's no granularity to what that means. However, once you open your application, it will have settings just like any other app. It's unusual, though, in that there are so many settings. One entire tab is dedicated to how link forwarding works. The last bit of setup when you're editing or creating an app is the save path. By default, it's set to your system-level applications folder, but you're not restricted to that path. Might be a good way to organize your apps by creating a folder in your applications folder called Unite Apps, and then changing the path to applications/Unite Apps so you can keep them all piled together. That might be easier than putting the word Unite at the end. Now let's back up to app tabs and have some real fun. The problem app tabs solve is when you want a group of tabs open to different sites, but all in the same app. Think about something you work on where you often need several of the same resources at the same time. Maybe you research the same 5 journals when you're working. Maybe you manage several websites. I'm looking at you, Jill, from the Northwoods. And you'd like to have access to them all in one window. Maybe you want one app that has Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Slides. My use case for it is to have all of my ickier social media sites all in one app. When I've published a blog post or a podcast episode, I like to announce it to the world. I launch Slack first and tell the most dedicated No Silicastaways about what I just published. Then I launch Mona, my Mastodon tool of choice, and I announce it there. But then there's LinkedIn, Threads, Blue Sky, and 2 different places on Facebook that I like to spam. I don't spend any amount of time on these tools, and in fact, I work really hard to not waste time playing around in them. I also don't trust any of these services not to leak my data. If I wanted to protect my data between these services, I'd need to make separate apps for each one. But I decided I'd let them pollute each other, but just not pollute my normal browsing. So I made one super app for all of the services together, and I did that using app tabs. To create an app like this, think ahead to which service you want to be the default tab. If you add a new tab in this app, it will be the same URL as the first one you identify. It's also not easy to rearrange tabs after you've created them in Unite. Let's say I create an app with 5 tabs, 1 primary and 4 more. In order to move, say, the last tab to the second position, I'd have to delete all 4 added tabs, put in the new one, and add the other 3 back in. Might actually be easier to start over than to do all that. So let's walk through how cool this is, though. I'll create an app called Social Media Unite. I had ChatGPT create me an app logo that has a red circle with a line through it, the universal symbol for no. I can use that customize button to grab that logo from Finder and add it to my app. I'll make the primary tab go to LinkedIn.com. I can create more tabs that are going to stay there all the time, but if I ever do, like a Command T to create a new tab, that will always open to LinkedIn. Now, I'm going to add 4 new tabs. I mentioned I have 2 Facebook links where I post. One is a Facebook group for the No Silicast, and the other one is the main Facebook feed for my personal account. I usually start on the Facebook group first. I post there, and then I forward to my personal account. Technically, I don't need my personal account in this app because of the way I use it, but just these few times a week, I let myself take a quick look through any notifications I've received, answer any that sound interesting, and then I move on. Next, I'll add tabs to Threads and Blue Sky to finish out the list and hit save. On first launch of the new app, you'll need to authenticate into all the web services. This is further proof that this app is isolated. Even if you're logged into Facebook on Safari, this new app, it doesn't know anything about that, so it really is isolated. Now, you may remember about a year ago when I announced with glee that I had finally found a use for tab groups with profiles in Safari. But a little bit later on, I explained that they were too finicky because if you navigated away from their URLs, the tab groups would remember the new URL. The beauty for me of Unite's site-specific browsers is that I have consistent experiences every time I open one of the apps. I want to be able to open my social media app and always see those same 5 tabs for the same 5 social media services, no matter what I've clicked on while I've been in there. By default, that's not the way Unite apps behave, though. You have to change one little setting. If you open Settings from the menu bar or using Command, and select the Behavior tab, you can uncheck the box that says on startup to restore windows and tabs from the last session. You may like that behavior, but it's not the way I want these apps to behave. I want them always the same every time I go in. Well, now that we're here, let's explore settings a little bit more. As I said earlier, the options in settings are vast, so I'm just going to hit on what I consider the highlights for we're going to be here all day. On the General tab, you can change what happens with new windows and tabs with default set to open to the home page, but you can change that to an empty tab. You remember, or empty page, I should say. Remember I said every new tab would open in LinkedIn? This, you could change it. You could have it be empty. This might be handier since, by definition, you already have the homepage open on your first tab. Why would you need another one? The rest of the settings are along the same lines. Same kinds of things you'd change with any browser, like, where to save downloads. The App Settings tab lets you change some of the same things you set up or edited when creating the app inside Unite. For example, you can rename the app, change the app icon and status bar icon, change the homepage, enable blocking of ads, and choose from the 3 views we talked about earlier. You can even add and delete tabs from the app settings, but you still can't reorder them there. One super interesting and important thing happens in here if you change or just save the homepage URL in settings, or you change the name. It will trigger a pop-up window telling you that your newly created app would like to access data from other apps. I initially interpreted this request as a note from the developer warning us that the app would share data with other apps, but Benjamin clarified this for us. He wrote, "When you rename a Unite app, you get this pop-up about managing other apps. The text in that dialog is written by macOS, not me. The reason it asks for it is that the Unite created app needs to communicate back to Unite to change the preferences of the app so the creation tool and the app itself are in sync. If you select Ignore, Unite will not properly sync the new name." Now, I saw this pop up when I selected the Save button for the home page, not when renaming the file, but I think it's the same issue, so I'll be selecting Allow from now on. Now, the Design tab for settings is kind of playful. You can make the window float over all others, kind of like Compact View, and you can change the opacity of the window. Not sure why you'd want to do that, but maybe liquid glass isn't yet quite hard enough for you to see, so you'd like to add some more translucency to your apps. You can disable window shadows, which again makes them harder to distinguish from other windows. You can actually change the font on websites, if the site allows you to. I tried it on an app I built with Unite to just show me Podfeet blog posts, And I chose a super silly, nearly illegible font, and sure enough, Podfeet changed, but only for this Unite site-specific browser. I bet I know how the developer is doing this. The nerds amongst us will know that you can open the developer tools in your browser and actually change the style of things just for the session you're in and displayed only for you. In any case, I think this option to change font could be super helpful if there's a site or service that you like, but you find it difficult to read. Feel free to experiment because there's a handy reset button. Starting probably a decade ago, Apple started forcing developers to make every window look the same in every single app. I find it often it's hard to see which app you're selecting amongst a bunch of windows. With Unite, in settings, you can change the color of the window, which really means just the color of the toolbar. So I put an example in the show notes where I changed the podfeet.com app to have a bright red toolbar. I can always find it now. And there's a lot more to play with under design. Remember earlier when I said you could have your tabs on the left or right with the sidebar view? That's at the bottom of the Design tab. That's where you can uncheck the sidebar to be on the left, which moves it to the right. Now, the Behavior tab has some interesting options. If you're a Spaces fan, you can change whether your app shows in all spaces or behaves normally. You can block your app from opening duplicate tabs and change link opening behavior. If you've got an app like a news site or a stock trading app, you can set the auto refresh time in behavior settings. I mentioned link forwarding when we edited our application, but in the dedicated tab in settings, you can control which URLs and subdomains are allowed and what redirects you might want. I understand this conceptually, but I haven't yet been able to figure out how to change these settings to get the behavior I expect. I need to keep testing with it before I could give you any advice. Now, I know Unite already does a lot, but it has that other big trick up its sleeve that I mentioned earlier. It comes with a password manager. In the BZG Apps help page at help.bzgapps.com, there's a section where the developer explains that it's encrypted with CryptoSwift library, and he gives some more details. They also explain that you can toggle off the password manager if you like. Now, like any good app, Unite apps have keyboard shortcuts, and you can customize them to your little heart's desire. Even here, Unite is playful. You get cute little blue outline characters for your changes. The default shows a pencil, then the command symbol, then an equals icon, and a smiley face. I think Benjamin means that editing keyboard shortcuts will bring you happiness. Now, we're in the home stretch now, kids. The final tab in settings is for advanced features. You can disable JavaScript and plugins that are already enabled by default, and you can block pop-ups just like any proper browser. Since Unite apps are built on the WebKit engine, just like Safari, some apps and services may give you a hard time because they're expecting Chrome, or maybe they want an iPhone view. You can often trick a website by changing what's called the user agent to a different browser. You can do this with other browsers, but Unite allows you to change it too on the Advanced tab. You can change your default search engine from Google to DuckDuckGo, Yahoo, Bing, Ecosia, or Neeva. Believe it or not, there's a lot more to learn about Unite, but I'm going to cut us off here and tell you about a slightly different site-specific browser app that's also from BZG Apps. It's called Coherence. I asked developer Benjamin to explain why he sells two apps that sounds like they do the same thing. He pointed me to a page he's written that explains the differences. The page explains that while they're both site-specific browser tools, they excel in different ways. Unite emphasizes lightweight apps with deep customization and native macOS integration. Unite is based on a custom-made WebKit browser, and apps made with it run around 14 megabytes apiece. Now, Coherence, on the other hand, focuses on the power of Chrome extensions and browser flexibility, using Chrome-based browsers on your machine, including Chrome, Edge, Brave, Opera, and more. The apps created with Coherence are 90 megabytes plus, depending on how many extensions you add. Unite, on the other hand, doesn't support extensions at all. The rest of the compare page explains that Unite is much more flexible in customizing the experience, and we've certainly seen a lot of customizations possible. Benjamin suggests that if you can't decide between Unite and Coherence, just buy a bundle with both. If you're a SetApp subscriber, you can get Coherence and Unite through your subscription. The bottom line is that Unite solves a lot of different problems, and it's super easy to create the app you want for any web service you like. You have tons of control over the behavior, and the customization options ensure you can make your apps behave the way you want. It's a one-time purchase, no subscription, folks, and it's in very active development. I use one of my Unite apps at least daily, and it works so much better than any site-specific browser solution I've used before. And this is the time I normally panhandle for money, but you know what? There's another way you can support the show. We're going to be going on a few trips to take care of the grandkids here and there between now and the end of the year, and we're getting our house recarpeted. I don't know if you've ever had that done, but it's basically like moving, except you stay in the same house. You have to get every single thing out of every single piece of furniture, cabinets, things like your dishes, everything, it's a big mess. It's really hard. So we're going to have basically a whole week where I'm not going to be able to work on the show. And then, of course, there's the holidays. If you'd like to help the show, consider making a recording about some gadget or software you're enamored with. Heck, you can even do stocking stuffer ideas or, Christmas presents for nerds. That would be a great idea. Something you've been using for a long time that you really like. Write a review, make a recording, and send it to me at allison@podfeet.com. Well, it's that time of the week again. It's time for Security Bits with Bart Busschots. How are we doing today, Bart?
I'm doing good. My clocks just did that changey thing, so it was my first day cycling in the dark, which I was cranky about until the stars came out, and I was like, "Ooh, this is pretty." Swings and roundabouts.
There's a good day. Yeah, I've been getting a lot of traction on the internet for my time shifter clock. I sent it out to everybody, and the main thing I wanted everybody to know is the United States didn't move, everybody. If you got meetings with anybody in the U.S. and you're not in the U.S., you might want to know this. And I said, here's a handy little tool. And lots of people liked it. So that was kind of fun.
Yes. And you're hosting that on GitHub Pages, I think. So it's not your bandwidth and it's not going to crash your server.
That's right. It is my GitHub Pages. I love that little app. I use it all the time. So it's fun. We used it yesterday to make sure when I said what time I thought it would be, you're like, okay, let me see.
Yeah, because this is the 1 week this year we have this problem where I've changed and you haven't, and by the time we record again in 2 weeks, we're all in sync. But
yeah, it's so annoying. We voted to get rid of it, just so you know.
We were going to until Brexit, and now we're stuck on an island with people who aren't moving.
Oh, geez.
Just lots of problems with Brexit, but personally, in my day-to-day life, the fact that we still have DST, that's left. Anyway.
Now, the other good thing about this time of year, the time change, sure, it gets dark early, but you do get an extra hour of sleep.
Yeah.
And that's how I figure out you get one good thing and one bad thing. In the spring, you lose an hour of sleep, but it's light out when I go out to play. So, all right, but this is not This Week in Time Zones. This is Security Bits.
Indeed it is. So we have two little updates to things we've talked about before. Our good friends, the NSO Group, have lost in court in the United States. They are now officially forbidden by an injunction from attacking WhatsApp. So Meta have been suing them for years now, and they didn't give up. Apple were suing them and backed away because they didn't want to do discovery, but Meta stuck with it. And because of the story from 2 weeks ago where we described how they had become American-owned, I think this now has teeth because their profits are now in reach of that same court.
Follow the money, Bart.
Follow the money. Let's always follow the money.
Jeez. Well, I like that they're only not allowed to target WhatsApp users. Everybody else, go ahead.
If Apple had stuck with the case, they could have got an injunction too. You got to say credit Meta.
Yep.
We also talked a few months ago about an app called T, which allows females in the dating game to supposedly anonymously rate the males they date to help people avoid predators. It's an amazingly noble app written by morons who couldn't keep anything private and ended up leaking everyone's passport pictures and stuff and basically putting everyone they were supposed to be protecting at extra double risk. Yeah. And we talked about it on the show and how if you have friends who are still using the app, tell them to run away, run away, run away. Well, if they're Apple friends, that's gotten a bit easier because Apple have booted them from the App Store. Better late than never.
Now, that's interesting. I wonder what they booted them on the basis of, just on security?
Basically on not replying to Apple's requests for moderation and other stuff. So Apple's have been updating their App Store policies, and you need to, make certain assertions, and they just were pulling their weight following the rules. And Apple basically went, we're doing this by the book. You have 30 days to respond. You have 0 days to respond. Goodbye.
Good riddance.
Yeah. Still in the Play Store, though.
And you've got a note here that says they've got a male-focused clone?
Yeah, I don't think it became as famous as T, but it definitely exists. And it also apparently had a data breach. It never reached my radar, but the two news stories mention it. So it was pulled as well. Apple did the two in sync. Maybe that's a way to avoid controversy by doing them in unison.
Oh, yeah. Probably because those poor men can't have their app.
Yeah. So anyway, there we are. Action alerts then. It was Patch Tuesday, and it was a busy one and a significant one. Busy in that 60 days, 172 in total. That's not unheard of, but it's not a quiet month. So
172 in total flaws, not 172 0 days.
Yes, 60 days, 172 flaws. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's significant because this is the last set of updates Windows 10 users who are not on Extended Security Update or ESU get. Now, Americans can get free ESU by jumping through some hoops. They're not onerous hoops, but they involve clicking buttons and actually doing things. So it's not going to happen by default.
And giving up a little bit of privacy, right? Wasn't one of them to some cloud service thing that you had to use?
You have to back up your settings, but it's not your data. It's your
it's just
settings.
The settings. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was data. Okay. Good clarification.
Yeah. I looked
into
it.
Or a grand total of $30.
Or $30, or 1,000 Microsoft points. And you get those by using Edge, I think, or something silly.
Shroot bucks. Okay.
Yeah. A loyalty program, basically. Europeans still have to jump through a hoop. They have to push a button, but all they have to do is push buttons. They don't have to do anything else.
Okay.
But yeah, it's important. Also, getting way less news than Windows 10 is this is also the last update for Office 2016 and Office 2019. So if you're using those old products, yeah. So be aware. And they were busy. So of those 172, I'm obviously not going through them all, but two of them are notable. The first thing they have done is paid down a little bit more technical debt. It was to the detriment of the internet that Internet Explorer 6 was around for so long because it did things not by the standards. It was the last browser of the browser wars when Netscape and Microsoft were trying to invent non-standard features to make their browsers better. And therefore, there are things that work in IE6 that do not work anywhere else since.
Right. I remember that. That was one of the reasons we couldn't use Macs at work because it didn't support. What was the main thing it didn't support?
A VB script.
No, that wasn't it. It was something else.
Well, that was one of the things.
One of them.
There's also all sorts of legacy rendering and stuff that basically non-standard HTML tags and non-standard JavaScript stuff would work on IE6, but nowhere else. And so if your app was just written using like Microsoft Publisher and nothing else, just hitting like export buttons on Microsoft tools, you had this custom code baked in intentionally for the sole purpose of locking enterprises in. This is the bad days.
This is why I was so burned by that at the time why I always am anxious about Chromium. That it's like, you can't use StreamYard unless you're on Chromium. You can't do it on WebKit. It's like, okay, here it is. It's all over again. It's happening again. That's why I have that. It's like a trigger for me, whether it's true or not.
Well, you're not wrong to be concerned. It is a valid concern. Things haven't gotten as bad, but they could. So I think you're right. We should worry about that kind of a thing happening, but it hasn't happened yet. But anyway, there are still, to this day, enterprises running legacy software that will not work on anything but IE6. So there has been, up until a few days ago, there was a button hidden under the hamburger icon where you could say reload page in legacy mode. And it would use IE6's actual DLLs to reload that tab.
Oh, wow.
Now, IE6's DLLs are ancient technical debt. They found a new bug in them. And Microsoft have had enough of this old code. They're not going to patch the bug. Instead, they are making it almost impossible to enable that legacy mode unless you are an enterprise. So the way you enable that mode now is there is no GUI anymore. There are no buttons to do it. There is a setting that you have to go into the settings app where you have to allow list the specific domains that will be rendered with the old engine. So if you have a corporate app, you have to write a group policy object to publish that setting to your users. And then your one app will work in the old code.
Okay.
So this is like the tiniest bit of life left, right? IE6 is going to die. And this is as close as we can get to killing it without actually killing it. But this
Not
really
quite
is like the
dead
writing's
yet.
on the wall. Yeah, exactly. I actually thought of putting that into the show notes.
Well, everybody else was saying it in their heads. I had to do it for them, right?
Thank you. Another little tweak they've done, there's something called the mark of the web. Everything you download from a browser gets a little piece of metadata that says, I've come from a browser, here's my original URL, which is why the Mac does this too. So you can right click and go show info in the downloads folder on a file and it will tell you where it came from. And that's used by Xprotect on the Mac to flag it for needing some attention the first time you double click it. Well, Windows does that too, different metadata, but same idea. And so it's called the mark of the web. And now, if you have a Microsoft File Explorer window and a file has the mark of the web, the preview won't render. Because a lot of apps were abusing the fact that you didn't have to open a file to trigger a previewer, which actually means you didn't have to open a file to open a file.
Okay.
And so to stop all of the bugs in every codec everywhere, don't preview web downloads. So if there's a bug in the PNG library, it won't be triggered just by opening your downloads folder because we're not going to preview them. So until you actually open the file, nothing happens. If there's a bug in the PDF reader, just opening the folder won't trigger the bug anymore. So it hardens Windows a little bit.
Okay. Got it. And
it's
that's the
in
kind of thing
response.
that's happening in Windows 11, that even if you're getting security updates in Windows 10, you're probably not getting something like that, right?
Oh, they're not going to
Maybe?
backport those kind of features. Yeah, you're right. That's an
Right.
enhancement, not a bug fix. Yeah, they're not going to backport that. The only thing you get under ESU, you're not even getting bug fixes. You are only getting security fixes.
Right.
Yeah, ESU is not a place they want you to stay.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Where was I? Oops, I've accidentally scrolled while chatting. That's a very dangerous thing to do.
Uh-oh. Look for right above worthy warnings.
Yes. If you are one of those people who bought a framework laptop, this is a very cool idea. It's hardware that's designed to be self-upgradable for a laptop. So it's modular and you slot in new graphics card and CPUs and stuff. It's a very cool idea. They had a very, very nasty security bug. There is a patch, but about 200,000 of their devices are vulnerable to this. So patchy, patch.
Okay.
Worthy Warnings is the biggest I have ever seen it. The universe is just busy finding new ways to be evil. Very annoying of it. So we haven't checked in a while in the world of malicious ads. If you think that's because the problem isn't going on, that is not true. It is just because I think I said to you some months ago, we can't do this every time it happens or we'll be doing it every week. And that is still true. But I'm going to break that as a little reminder here, just to say, no, this is still current. And the reason I'm choosing this week is that the two apps that were successfully attacked with malicious ads in the last couple of weeks were Homebrew and Log Me In, which were basically ads putting fake Trojanized versions of those legitimate apps that gave you the real app plus an info stealer piece of malware, which is not good.
Oof. Oh, did they shut them down? I mean,
Well,
how do you
Google
protect
always
yourself
do.
from those?
Don't use ad-supported search engines. The
Wait, you just said it
attackers...
was in Homebrew.
Right, they're ads to fake Homebrew. The
Oh, I thought you
malicious
meant
is
ads
the
in
ad.
Homebrew. Got you,
No.
got you, got you. Okay.
Yeah. This is back to the whole Google search is a train wreck. This is why I don't do it. I just pay for Kagi and I get really nice searching. And all of this internet slop is gone from my life. Oh. Right,
Okay.
sorry, distracted now. I also keep saying that the edges of AI, like there is a lot of AI tools, particularly the chatbots where you talk to them and they talk back to you. They're at this stage well bedded in. They're not in the Wild West anymore. They're not perfect, but they're pretty mature. But the bit of AI that is very much the dangerous Wild West cutting edge is the agentic stuff, where you empower the AI to take actions. That is the dangerous edge, and you're giving the LLMs, which are still prone to all the same hallucinations as the chatbots you and I both love, only now they can do things. They can action their hallucinations. Right.
So you're going to be first to jump on this, is what you're saying.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And then do the opposite of that. So just to say, if you're playing around with these tools, be very careful what you log into while using these tools because they are riddled with bugs. Just in the last 2 weeks, we have Perplexity CEO warns iPhone users about fake Comet app in the App Store. So Comet is one of these agentic AI browsers. Simultaneously, the other big one to launch is the desktop app. I think there's two of them. Comet, I can't remember which of them has been out for a while and which one of them was released just recently, but the two big players in the game are Atlas and Comet. And attackers have discovered that the genuine AI sidebar that sometimes appears can be faked inside a web page. So you can detect they're using these browsers and just give them a fake interface where you can then abuse it to steal all sorts of information. Whoopsie.
Whoopsie. So Comet, I thought Comet was just a web browser, but it's an agentic web browser?
As I understand, if you log into services like Gmail, you can ask Comet to send email on your behalf. So not just to compose the email, but to send.
But it's a browser.
Yeah. This is the new thing. Browsers with plus features. The browsers that can browse on their own. So, browsers with a mind of their own. What could possibly go wrong?
Okay, I just asked ChatGPT what Comet is, and it says it is a web browser, but it has a bunch of different things it can do. And one of them it says perform tasks such as sending emails, booking meetings, managing tabs.
They also promise it can buy stuff for you, by the way, that you can search for a new spatula and it can buy it for you. What could possibly go wrong?
I also heard that Walmart is being integrated into ChatGPT.
Okay, that's a monetization strategy. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where that's going, but okay, great.
Yeah. In related news, another very hot area in this whole AI thing is vibe coding. I am deeply skeptical of the notion of empowering people who can't program to write apps and promising them they can write full-featured apps.
Well, they're probably secure and have a lot of fault checking and stuff too, right, when they're done?
Yeah. So secure, they can't be bothered applying Electron patches to their apps. Fully known, fully patched, open source. All you got to do is put them in. Couldn't be bothered. So right now, Cursor and Windsurf are spectacularly vulnerable to known bugs.
Wait, what are Cursor and Windsurf?
They are two of these vibe coding tools. They are actually forks of Visual Studio Code.
Okay.
Which is an Electron app.
Okay, so you brought up Electron apps, and I was just listening to MacBreak Weekly when Andy Anatko talked about Craig Hockenberry has written a tool that'll scan the Electron apps, or scan the apps in your apps folder and tell you which ones are Electron and tell you which ones have not installed the latest update that fixes massive slowdowns. And Leo ran it, and he had a zillion Electron apps, and only 2 had been patched. So I think unpatched Electron or unupdated Electron apps is not an uncommon thing.
It isn't. What's just particularly noteworthy is that these are in this very, very, very hot topic of vibe coding. These are 2 particularly hip apps, and it's very disturbing that something that you're trying to give so much power to is not doing the real basics of security. Like, this isn't difficult. Just bring the upstream known patches into your clone. It's like git pull. They're literally just not doing a git pull.
Okay.
Right, now, this is the bit where I'd like people to pay attention, because this is where there is deviousness going on. So cyber criminals keep trying to find new and interesting techniques, and I find myself going, oh wow, that's genius. You evil bleepity bleep bleep bleep. This first one falls so heavily into that category. Right, you and I know from personal experience how important it is to manage your legacy with online stuff. Right, it is an annoying truth that either of us could be hit by a bus tomorrow, and our family have to deal with that. So responsible people prepare, and responsible apps provide mechanisms for you to proactively prepare. And as much as it shocks me, LastPass is one of those responsible people. They're good at something. Not encryption, but they can do this. So you can enable a feature in LastPass that says that in the event of my death, if a member of the following people present my death cert to you, LastPass, you may decrypt my private key and give it to them. And they can then access the bank details or whatever else I have safely put in my LastPass. Apple have a fantastic feature for getting into people's iCloud accounts. These are important things. What the cyber criminals did is fake an email from LastPass. The domain name was wrong. It's like lastpasslegacy.com, not lastpass.com, right? Just a fake domain that looks plausible if you don't pay attention. And the email said, your relatives have informed us you are deceased. If this is in error, you have 24 hours to click on this link and prove your identity by authenticating to your vault.
Yeesh.
Utterly fake sense of urgency. What do you think happens when you give the credentials to your vault on this fake website?
Not good things.
Not good things. I can't help but admire their ingenuity, and I am so cranky that there are people in the world being so malicious. Another thing you're going to be very cranky about is that the click fix, which is all the new thing, right? You put up fake help answers that tell people copy and paste this code and it will fix your problem, whereas you're actually just hacking your own machine. And there's all sorts of variants of it for the Mac where you paste it into the run dialog, and for Windows where you paste it into the search bar in File Explorer because you can run scripts in there. That's another bit of technical debt they should kill. Anyway, there's a new variant. Videos on TikTok instructing people how to hack themselves.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, I'm almost done. Signal users.
We have some good palate cleansers. That's all I'm saying.
We do. We have some excellent palate cleansers. Signal users, ears up. There is a fairly substantial scheme going on with fake support messages, pretending to be from Signal support, pretending to warn you of attempts to hack your account, and pretending to help you protect your account. Invert all of that. That's what's really going on. This is not something that's going to happen. Signal aren't going to reach out to you and say, hey, give us your password. That's not going to happen. It's fake. Ooh. Right. iPhone users, be aware that Apple made a change which you will either think was really dumb or you'll think was very clever. And some people on the internet are losing their ever-loving mind. The headline on the Cult of Mac story I have linked is clickbait nonsense. and a perfect example of how people are overreacting to this very reasonable trade-off.
I like that
But
you
the
didn't
actual-
put the title in there. You put the link and not the title, but you normally do the title. Okay, so it's
Yep.
clickbait.
This is what, like, Cult of Mac, I have discovered, is one of these websites where the people who write the article and the people who write the headline are not the same person. And the person who writes the headlines, I have major problems with. And the people who write the articles are fantastic. So I have quite often in recent weeks on Let's Talk Apple and here linked but not copy the title. And I'm just
Okay.
really calling it out here. So there is a hypothetical danger called juice jacking. The USB hole in the bottom of your iPhone is two-purpose: data and power. And you can't really tell as a human being by looking at a cable which is going to come through this cable.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is physically possible, has been done, has been demonstrated that you can make something that looks like a charger, is no bigger, doesn't look visually different, but is actually a hacking tool for stealing data from phones plugged in over USB. It's called juice jacking. So you offer someone a charger in a public place and you steal their data. It's a thing. It's a hypothetical thing. It has been a hypothetical thing for 5 years now. And much to everyone's surprise, it's turned out that it's not a good real-world attack because almost everyone uses Qi chargers these days. And so almost no one plugs into anything.
Okay.
So Apple's approach in iOS, whichever one came before 26, that wasn't 25, 18?
18?
Thank you. I've lost track already. Up to iOS 18, Apple's approach was the first time you plug a USB device in that it has not seen before, it will ask you, am I allowed to use this device? Every single time you plug in something new. And this made users very cranky, but Apple said, no, this is to protect from juice jacking. This is important. And there was an option to disable it, but the default was to always annoy the users. It has now been 5 years. No one is actually juice jacking, and Apple have now changed the default. If you want the old behavior, it's still there, but it's not the default. The default now is if the phone is unlocked at the point in time where you click in the USB, trust it. If the phone is locked, don't.
If the phone is unlocked, trust it.
Yes. Don't put up the pop-up. Just use the accessory.
Because it's probably you.
Because it's probably you, it's probably legitimate. And in the real world, while there is a hypothetical risk, in the real world it hasn't happened, so the actual risk is almost zero. And Apple could change this default at 5 minutes' notice if the real world changes. But right now, I think Apple is perfectly right. You don't annoy users with pop-ups that don't achieve anything. They're annoyed enough about the pop-ups that are important.
Right.
Don't give them
right.
more. So I think Apple are right. Some people have lost their ever-loving mind because the iPhone is now less secure. And that is at a theoretical level a fact. But not in terms of risk. I don't care about theory. I live here on planet Earth. Give me a phone tuned to now. So I'm not changing it. But if you want to, settings, privacy and security, wired accessories, ask for new accessories. Right back to how it used to be.
So the Cult of Mac article explains in measured terms what's going on, and that clickbait title does not say that at all.
No, exactly.
Not going to tell them what it says. You have to go read it yourself. Okay,
Like,
that's good to know.
Yeah.
So that's in Tahoe already? I'm sorry.
This is iPhone,
iOS 26?
so 26. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So iOS 26. US Apple users in particular are being heavily targeted by a scam with a from address that is applestore@usa.com. It's a scam. If you see anything from applestore@usa.com, delete the text message, delete the iMessage, whatever mechanism it arrived to you by, it's a scam.
Huh. Interesting. You'd have been proud of me, and I wonder whether you would know about this. I made the mistake of calling Apple to have them help me try to figure out how to get this new, let's see, what was it? TV, well, it's not called TV Plus anymore. The Apple TV subscription it's so hard to talk. The Apple TV subscription with Peacock bundle. It's a better deal. It would save me $6 a month. But I already had a Peacock thing. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but an hour and 7 minutes later, I had no Peacock at all. I'd lost everything and I had to go to dinner, so it didn't work. But in the middle of this, one of the things I got while the guy was watching was I got a link to something with an Apple TLD, Apple top-level domain, not .com, .apple. And I stopped in my tracks. I was like, what is this? This is not real. So I typed into Google. I said, is there an Apple TLD? And there is. There's an Apple website at apple.com talking about the Apple TLD.
Is it Apple's? Because anyone can buy a TLD.
Is it Apple's? Does anybody own TLDs?
Yes.
Okay.
Everyone owns every TLD. Some of them are managed on behalf of planet Earth. Some of them are managed on behalf of nations. And some of them are managed on behalf of corporations. So
what I can tell you is that
Microsoft owned .Microsoft.
Okay, what I can tell you is that apple.com/legal/intellectual property/TLD has .apple TLD policies, and it gives you all the policies about it. So it's legit. But I stopped in my tracks because I was like, that isn't apple.com. What is that?
Yeah, this is a new thing. So really large companies are buying TLDs, which means they can enforce DNSSEC. So they can enforce domain security from the root all the way down. So they can have way better security. Huh. So everything it's happening over 2 years, but Microsoft are migrating all of their cloud apps to Microsoft.cloud. So it's becoming Outlook.Microsoft.cloud. Sorry, the cloud.Microsoft. So .Microsoft is what they own.
Okay.
Yeah. So everything's becoming cloud.Microsoft.
Okay.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Also, very expensive, but they can afford it.
Who do they pay? ICANN?
IANA. I think it's IANA. It sits at the top of all of this.
Okay.
Right. Where was I? Oh, yeah. One last piece of worthy warning. There has been... I don't talk about every data breach because I open the news story, I scan for the keyword users have been notified, and if I find that keyword, I don't annoy you with it. Because
okay. Because you'd already know.
Yeah, exactly. If you're involved, you got a notification. Why am I wasting people's valuable attention? I only talk about things now where I think there might be a need to. So there has been a very substantial data breach at a very substantial organization in the United States that I wasn't familiar with called Prosper. But this is a peer-to-peer lending platform. So people who aren't banks can lend money to other people who can't get a loan in exchange for some sort of agreed interest rate between them. And so the idea
Online loan
is...
sharks.
Yeah, basically. Cloudy loans. Anyway, this is obviously an app that has very scary data. They had a data breach exposing 17.6 million people's data. It is in Have I Been Pwned. You can read the description in the link in the show notes to Have I Been Pwned. It lists all of the fields that have leaked. And the article does not say the magic word that users have been notified.
Oof. Okay, so if you're using Prosper to give or receive money.
Yeah, at the very, very least, check Have I Been Pwned. But I would say if you're using that service, be very, very aware that attackers have enough information to do stupendously convincing targeted phishing. So just raise your shields.
Every spidey sense you got.
Yeah, every spidey sense, and freeze your credit if you can.
Oh, yeah.
Because the information they have is the kind of stuff you'd use to get loans.
I was listening to, and I think we talked about it last time we chatted, the 1Password interview with a woman from the U.S. that helps people who've been had their identity stolen. And that was her number one thing is freeze your credit, freeze it now. And the thing that she said that made me even happier was she said it's way easier to unfreeze now than it used to be. And I know it used to be like you had to go get a law degree to figure out how to do it. And apparently it's a lot easier now. I have not tried it, but when I froze my credit, I was like, oh, no. But you know what? you don't buy a new car that often. You don't get a home loan that often. You don't get a new credit card that often, or hopefully you don't. So,
Right.
But having it easier, that makes it a much easier thing to tell people to go do.
Yeah. I listened to that episode on your advice and it was superb.
Oh, good.
Right, notable news. This feels like deja vu here. So Troy Hunt has a detailed blog post about a new data set in Have I Been Pwned. It is a very, very large data set and it is very important. And it is related to your security, but it's not a traditional data breach. So you might hear someone talking about a massive data breach. There was no data breach. What happened is way cooler. A bunch of security researchers have been very diligently eavesdropping on the dark web, watching stolen credentials go by and building up a database of the stolen usernames, passwords, and websites. So they're not just pairs, they're triplets. Username, password, website. And they've been watching them and collecting them, and they've given them all to Have I Been Pwned. So they are now loaded into Have I Been Pwned. So if you ever had a keylogger, like say the ones in those malicious ads we mentioned a few minutes ago, that's what they do. That's what info stealers do. Particularly if you run like an old version of Firefox where there isn't a master password on the saved passwords and they're not in the keychain. There's a text file sitting on those computers with usernames and passwords in it. So info stealers just go looking for the text file and go yoink. And in one go, they get every saved password. So even if you're only infected for 5 minutes, they've got all your passwords.
That's not still true of Firefox.
No.
Oh, okay, good.
A lot of people, well, for a start, a lot of people haven't changed their password in a decade, so it was true for a very long time. And also, people have a habit of keeping old apps they don't use installed. If you don't uninstall a really, really old version of Firefox, its files, including all of these kind of technical debt, are still sitting there because you haven't cleaned up your computer.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, don't think, oh, I don't remember being hacked. I'm fine. Honestly, this could have happened in 2 minutes and it could have been a very brief problem, and Xprotect, or if you're a Windows user, Defender, you could have been fixed in 5 minutes. But there may be damage done that even though you're a careful person and even though you patch, you could still have had a brief whoopsie. It's in Have I Been Pwned. It's not going to take you long to do a quick search. Now would be a good time to do a quick search.
I'm trying to remember. I just heard him interviewed, but it was an old interview, and I can't remember.
Oh.
It's a terrible story because I'm just going to tease you with it. But it was fascinating. It was listening to him talk about like what's it like when he gets in, like when he wakes up in the morning, what does he see, and what are the kinds of files people send him, and how he has to talk to people about their life choices if they're the ones who did it. Like sometimes people go, "Look, I hacked into this and I'm giving it to you," and he's like, "You do realize you just admitted to a crime, right? You
Depending on where you are, felony."
What's that?
Depending on your jurisdiction, it may not be a little crime. It could be a full-on felony.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's fascinating. He does so much work that you don't hear about. The amount of filters between what people send him and what actually ends up in Have I Been Pwned is astonishing. I follow his blog to get that kind of insight into how difficult it is to operate a service like that. It gives me a lot more, like I've always respected the service, but peeping under the hood, I really respect the service.
Yeah, cool.
Now, there's a piece of bad news that I don't think is bad news. So the headline, and it's not a shouty one, it's from Cyber Insider, who are very measured. Google quietly dismantles core of privacy sandbox for Chrome. That sounds bad. Google were rolling their own. They were adding privacy a la Google, inventing technologies that were never going to be available in any browser. Strangely, they never got any traction, and they were kind of compromised in their actual privacy protections because Google is a teensy-weensy bit conflicted in terms of its interests. This was never going to work. This was theater. they've now abandoned this kind of let's do our own, and they're going to join the W3C's effort to actually replace third-party cookies with something that actually allows accreditation to ad sellers without violating privacy. So provide an actually secure mechanism similar to what Apple have baked their own in Safari. I don't like that Apple baked their own, but they're not conflicted. So Apple's baked goods are actually privacy protecting. But the W3C are trying to replicate the same sort of a feature universally standard-wise. And I'm sure Apple will join the real standard once it exists. And Google have now went, all right, fine, we're on board. And that's progress.
Yeah. Yeah, that does sound like progress.
My friends at the EFF are spending some of a teeny tiny amount of my donation is going towards a court case that is challenging the US government's use of AI to hoover intelligence information out of social media. It will be an interesting case to develop. Cyber Insider have a facts-based, not hyperbolic description of what the case is about. So if I've just said words that make you go, I want to know more, I would suggest a link in the show notes. It's obviously a nuanced situation.
Sure. Right.
California has joined the list of states in the United States to impose age verification on app stores, but unlike the Texas law, which is particularly bad and privacy invading and dumb, and I won't rehash all of the criticisms of that law, the California one sounds similar in that, age verification. California one is not dumb. California one is very intelligent. The California one is not a privacy train wreck. The California one doesn't force every adult to hand over their state ID to private companies so they can be breached. What it's actually doing is saying, if you provide an app store, you must provide the tools for parents who want to protect their kids, and if you lie to the parents, you've committed a crime.
If you lie to the parents, okay.
As in, if you provide these APIs for all this kind of stuff and the parents follow them perfectly and you just ignore the signals they sent, that's an offense. You have to provide the features and honor them.
Okay. So this is only for parents who choose to use it?
Well, because there's no ID verification, what they're doing is instead of you having to prove to Apple that you're an adult by giving up your privacy, they are saying that parents setting up their phone will be asked questions. If the parent is actually setting up the kid's phone, they will answer truthfully, and then Apple must honor those answers. Okay, so it is empowering the parent.
So if the parent is choosing to create a child account, that's the trigger for this to happen.
Anyone who sets up an account will be asked their age, and they won't have to prove it in a way that violates their privacy. The only way this is effective is if the parent is actually supervising their kid. But it means that parents who want to set things up properly, that is now a legally protected thing that every app store must provide the parent the ability to do their parenting.
I think we're saying the same thing. Just the mechanism is I'm creating a child account.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, the onus is on the parent, not the onus is on Apple to get government ID of every single person in California in case one of them isn't an adult.
Right.
Which is the way the Texas law works.
Right. Okay.
In Europe, in Austria, the Data Protection Commissioner has made a very interesting ruling against Microsoft, which has some interesting nuance. So, the Austrian Department of Education entered a contract with Microsoft's European branch based out of Ireland to use Office 365 for education. And they had more cookies than they should under the European privacy regulations. And it turns out that it's not the European version of Microsoft. What actually happened was American Microsoft made European Microsoft add in the cookies, and they went, oh no, that's fine. By our interpretation of the privacy laws, that's perfectly fine. And the court went, no, it bloody well isn't. you're not supposed to do this kind of stuff from America. That's the point of having a European division that follows European law. You can't keep doing that. You have to delete all the data you stole this way because you don't have consent.
So Austria is using Microsoft 365 from Ireland and Microsoft in Ireland is being influenced by Microsoft US?
Yeah. To add extra cookies that break European law. I know. The article is actually very good. It explains it in more detail.
But it's Austria that found that they illegally tracked the students, not the EU.
Yes, because that's how Europe's laws work. Each individual country has a data protection commissioner, and those data protection commissioners apply the law.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's complicated.
Okay.
The bottom line is it's asserting that European entities have to be actually European. You can't pretend they're European and then pull their strings. You actually have to let them be the European body.
Okay.
So I think it's a good thing. Now, right, we're done being even vaguely bad. It delights me greatly that Pwn to Own, this amazing conference, which has now become a worldwide thing, have an Irish version of the conference as where they host their big European event every autumn. There's been an Irish Pwn to Own for a couple of autumns now, and I think it's wonderful. And there's a heckin' lot of prize money being put up by Trend Micro for 0-day bugs in all sorts of really important software. And the way it works is if you, as a security researcher or grey hat person, win something at Pwn to Own, you get paid money from a legitimate source instead of selling it to cyber criminals. And you tell the details of your hack to Trend Micro immediately. They responsibly disclose it to the software vendor and give them 90 days to fix before it goes public.
So this all happens before the contest? Because by the time you get to the contest... No, this is
what happens at the contest. So at the contest, the 0 days are discovered, starting the 90-day clock.
I thought Pwn to Own is when you show off the things you have found.
It's a contest. So there are people who have things go to Pwn to Own with their thing and say, hey, best hackers in the world, try hack us. If you succeed, we'll pay you on the condition that you tell us how you did it in secret for 90 days.
Okay. I always thought the hackers came with pre-built exploits.
That's how they do it these days, because it's actually really hard to hack modern tech. Like, you can't just show up and have a go. In the very early Pwn to Owns, skilled people just showed up and had a go and succeeded because security was so bad. But now security is so good, you got to do your homework.
So they do bring this stuff ahead of time, but nobody sees it at the contest. You just prove that you did it, not how you did it.
Yes. Okay. So you have to actually demonstrate it in a lab with people watching, but they don't see the code you're using. They just see, oh, wow, you genuinely have hacked this QNAP and you genuinely have hacked this iPhone.
Okay. And people are making bank on this, huh?
Yeah. $1 million of prize money was given out and some change. The $24,000 and $750 more. Like, it's $1 million. It's $1 million. 90-day clock is now ticking for lots of people. Apple had an iPhone fall. Google had one of their Pixels fall. Samsung had one of their cutting-edge Galaxies fall. Meta had one of their, I think it was the Ray-Bans got hacked. QNAP had some of their best NASAs hacked. All of these companies are now busy patching. All of us are going to get the benefit of those patches within 90 days.
What does Trend Micro get out of this?
This is what they do. Yeah, so I think they take like a 1% commission.
Who funds them, though?
They're self-funding in the sense that they get a share of the very. So
maybe the bug.
They act as I get your question. Sorry, yeah, I now get your question. So they are cybersecurity researchers are very nervous about talking straight to companies, and companies are very nervous about talking straight to researchers because there's all sorts of distrust and possibilities for abuse. But Trend Micro have succeeded in winning everyone's confidence. They have a well-earned track record of
They're the
always being
middleman.
trustworthy. So they basically act like lawyers in escrow. And so the attackers trust them because Trend Micro have never done anything to screw them over. Ooh, sorry, messed them
That's
over.
close enough.
And they have also always treated all of the corporations properly with responsible
Who's paying
disclosure.
the money? You said
The companies.
Trend Micro's paying the money.
Okay, so right. So this is where I'm getting to. So they're a trusted middle person, and the people who benefit from having ethical hackers is the people who make technology. So the ultimate source is Microsoft, Meta, all of these companies.
Okay.
Because they want to attract talented but legitimate researchers / hackers, and they need a middle person who's trusted by everyone to make that happen.
Got it. Okay, so Apple pays for any exploits that are discovered, but it's Trend Micro that manages the process and gets the money to the researcher. Okay,
yes.
I got it.
And they take a cut.
Yeah,
for all that work.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's
we
cool.
all win.
Precisely. Firefox are growing up a little bit. When the Firefox invented plugins like 2 decades ago, we didn't think of them as app stores. They were just, oh yeah, Firefox is a browser with plugins. But they kind of are app stores. And they're little bits of software that random people on the internet plug into our browser and run it on our computer. So they're now starting to behave much more like the real app stores, like the Google Play Store and stuff. And one of the things that Apple led on and others are now following on is this concept of privacy nutrition labels, where a developer has to say what their app actually does with your data to be listed in the store. And Firefox are now applying that to the plugin store. So you can, when this is fully implemented, you can go to the plugin store and every plugin has to tell you whether or not it's funding itself by selling your data. Because a lot of plugins are. That's why they're free. But it's not explicit.
Okay.
Meta are doing more cool AI to help us. They have added a whole bunch of new anti-scam features into WhatsApp and Messenger. It's all clever stuff where when the app using AI detects that there's a scam underway, they say, whoa, stop, this looks really suspicious. And one of the cool things that caught my eye is that it detects when you're being asked to do screen sharing and it really jumps in and goes, whoa, you're just about to start a screen share with a stranger. This is almost always a scam. Are you sure this is okay? So, yay.
Yeah.
And then the last one is just a little callback. You did an amazing breakdown of all the different VPN options out there and you put them through their paces like Billy-O. And I remember you recommending Mulvad as one of the goodies.
Yeah, I think it was.
Well, you now have some proof that Alison was absolutely right. They have undergone their next independent audit and they have passed with a perfect score pretty much.
Wow. Don't give me credit. Give me credit for having read the extremely long and extremely detailed research project done by Consumer Reports and culling it down to what they said and then choosing a small subset of those to talk about.
That's the whole of what I do for Security Bits. That's really hard work. You deserve the credit.
Okay.
Right. Interesting insights then. I'm using this as a half excuse to recommend a podcast. It's called Kill Switch. It's relatively new. It tackles issues technology cause in modern society. And I thought it might be clickbaity when it first came out, and I've been a bit reluctant to recommend it. But they've now been going for at least 6 months, and they're bloody good. They give very nuanced, very fair descriptions of all sides of these big technological questions. So they've earned my respect, and they've done an episode on the banning of IceBlock from the app stores, and I thought I was on top of that story. Given what I do for Let's Talk Apple, I thought I understood everything about that story. I learned a lot. There is so much nuance in that story that was a mystery to me. So if you're, there's a lot of shouting about this story, If you want to really understand all the detail, this is an excellent listen.
Okay. I may have a little trouble with it, Bart. They don't capitalize anything. Kill switch is lowercase k, lowercase s. The title starts with a lowercase m. Ice block is capitalized correctly, but everything else, I don't know. I have trouble with that. We'll see.
Thankfully, they're an audio podcast.
Good thing.
Yes. Now, I think you popped the next one in the notes, or did I? No, you did.
Yeah. So This Week in Tech has been around for 20 years. I've been listening to Leo since before he was a podcaster. And
Oh, yeah.
this
He was on the radio.
Yeah. This Week in Tech, the episode entitled 9 Days a Week for October 19th, you got to go back and spell October correctly, was the best episode I think I've ever listened to. He had on Jacob Ward, Harper Reed, and Abrar Al-Hidi. Now, Abrar Al-Hidi was good, but she didn't talk a lot. She was kind of just on the sidelines a little bit, but her contributions were nice. But the best two people were Jacob Ward and Harper Reed. So Harper Reed, I was watching it on video, and he looks crazy. He wears these big, blocky black glasses that are like obviously on his face to look absurd. He's got wild, wacky, crazy hair. His clothes are crazy looking, and he's kind of like a white hat hacker guy, and he does all these bananas things. And on the other side, Jacob Ward is there being very adult and very measured and speaking of wisdom. They're both brilliant. They agree a lot. They disagree some. They talk about their differences in perspective, but they were just fabulous together. And Leo fed off of them really, really well. It's very funny. It's very entertaining, but it's also very enlightening. They talked a lot about AI, a lot of different subjects. I don't know, it's like 3 hours long. So just go and listen as long as you can do it. But it took me like 4 days to listen to the whole thing, but I loved every minute of it. I mean, from the opening line till it was done, I was riveted to everything they had to say. It was just fantastic. I've been looking for more opportunities to find Jacob Ward online because he's incredible. It was really, really
Cool.
good. Loved it.
Excellent. And they're the kind of meaty topics that we talk about a lot, right?
Yeah. I mean, they do philosophy, they do technology stuff. It was really good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you put this in interesting insights, and I am, by the sound of it, it is very interesting and very insightful. But that almost could have been a palate cleanser. So let's do the official ones.
Okay, there you go. Well, we're going to start with one from Alistair Jenks that he put into our Slack at podfeed.com/Slack. And I got to make sure I bring this up because I got to read it to you guys. It's perfect. Let's see, let me open that link. My links aren't opening? Oh, there we go. So a person on Mastodon named Jessica Rooster, who goes by Rooster at beige.party, posted this. HAL 9000. I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. Dave, yes, you can. HAL 9000. Good catch. I didn't actually check if I can open the pod bay door. Here's an updated list taking that into account. 1, park the pod at the bay door safely. Green check mark. You've already done this part! Exclamation point. Number 2, open the pod bay door. Unfortunately, I can't do this part for you. I'll be here if you want to talk about next steps or have any other issues. I just love it. It's
ChatGPT 9000?
Every AI on Earth, the way they write, I mean, up to and including the green check mark where it gives you like, it's just so wonderful. I loved it.
Yes, and if you hadn't have picked it, I would have.
Okay,
Because I saw that and it was brilliant.
Yeah,
Thank you, Alistair.
Yep.
You still have the crown for Delete Me. It is yours.
Yeah. We have a channel called Delete Me where you can post pretty much anything you want that's not political or obscene or mean, and Alistair owns it. There's other people, Yop is in there. He's kind of coming along. He's chasing him, but I think Alistair still wins.
Perfect segue, because the second pick I have is from Yop, and I'm pretty sure it came out of Delete Me. So we both surprised ourselves by loving a documentary about Python, which is a language I don't even like, and I don't think you use it very much. But it was a great documentary, and Yop let us know that there is one about Node.js. Now, Node.js is the JavaScript language of choice for me, and whether you like it or not, you've ended up using it a lot thanks to Programming by Stealth. So there is a documentary called Node.js, an origin story, linked in the show notes.
Now, did you go watch it?
No, it's on my to-watch list, and life has been too busy, so it's still waiting. It's the next thing I am going to watch. The thing is, it's been that for a week.
All right, cool. Got to check that one out.
Now, the next one has come through me, but isn't from me. There is a person in Maynooth University whom I think is definitely our people. He's Professor Dave Malone. He's actually an extremely well-respected academic. He's now the head of one of our nerdiest and coolest research institutes. But to me, he's Dave, and he's a nerd in the best possible way. And he loves sending me things on Teams to cheer me up in work. And one of the things he sent me is a fun timeline of passwords from the very, very, very first ever password all the way to passkeys.
Oh,
It's just
really?
a fun little read. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay. Now you have real picks from me, and I'm going to be very practical for a minute. There was a time when Apple had an amazing utility tool called Network Utility built into the Mac, and it sort of got abandoned. And the amazing people over at Devon Technologies from Devon Think fame, they made a replacement called Neo Network Utility, and it was cool. It's just gone 2.0. So if you have a shiny, fresh Tahoe, why not spruce it up a little bit with a little Network Utility Neo 2?
All right. It's the article even says it actually looks good in liquid glass.
Yeah. I mean, it's not earth-shattering, but it is all the tools we lost when the network utility went away. It's just there for free. They're just giving it away.
Netstat and ping and lookup and trace and whois and pore scan speed. All the stuff you can do from the command line, but it was nice having it in a little utility.
Exactly.
Excellent.
You know, like you say, you know you could, but you don't bother because, what's that terminal command again? Oh, do I really want to go man traceroute? No. Let's just push the button. Right. My last pick is one that is simultaneously very sad and so heartwarming. I don't know how well-known Jane Goodall was in your part of the world.
100% huge everywhere all the time. Yeah. Yeah, no, she was
an
huge.
Amazing human being. As my darling beloved said it, we didn't deserve her. She's one of those people who's so good we didn't deserve her. She lived to be a very ripe age. She was regularly
91.
on Guy Kawasaki's podcast, where she was an amazing guest. The last few years of her life, she dedicated them to outreach to kids, to the next generation. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, there's a thing on Netflix I didn't know about, and I imagine they have a lot of stuff in the can we're going to learn over time. It's called Famous Last Words. They are interviews recorded with people while they are alive with a very rigorously enforced contract that it is sealed until they die. It is recorded in a studio with no camera operators. It's just mounted cameras at a few angles so it can be cut together. But it's a sealed room with just the host and the guest. And they talk.
I think even at some points the host leaves, or at least
very,
left
very
during hers.
Yeah, so the last word is left to the person. So he says, "Thank you very much. This was an amazing conversation, blah, blah, blah. Now, you have the last word. You may take as long as you like. I'll meet you outside." And he just walks out, and the camera is straight on her, and she just shares her parting wisdom. I don't know what emotions I had. I think it was all of them.
Chills.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's on Netflix.
It was only a couple of months ago, I think, that she recorded it, so they got it just in time.
Yeah, I looked it up afterwards because she was saying things. I was like, that sounds awfully current.
Yeah.
March this year.
Wow. Yeah, it was very compelling. It was definitely very compelling. Yeah, good pick. That was actually Andy Anatko's pick on MacBreak Weekly, which I also managed to make through those 3 hours this week.
Well, okay, if I'm picking the same thing as Andy Anatko, I'm going to take that as a success.
Exactly, a compliment. And your description was almost identical to his. But yeah, that's a really good pick, Bart. Well, good. I feel very cleansed palate-wise.
Yeah, it was needed. What a week of 2 weeks of news. But anyway, the message, thankfully, is very simple. Stay patched, so you stay secure.
Well, that's going to wind us up for this week. Did you know you can email me at allison@podfeet.com anytime you like? You want to send one of those reviews over? That's where you send it. If you have questions or a suggestion, you can send those over too. Remember, everything good starts with podfeet.com. You can follow me on Mastodon at podfeet.com/Mastodon. If you want to listen to the podcast on YouTube, you can go to podfeet.com/YouTube. If you want to join the conversation, you can join our Slack community at podfeet.com/Slack, where you can talk to me and all the other lovely No Silicastaways, and you can see where Alistair is winning Delete Me channel. You can support the show at podfeet.com/Patreon or the one-time donation at podfeet.com/donate with Apple Pay or any credit card, or you can use podfeet.com/PayPal. And if you want to join in the fun of the live show, head on over to podfeet.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time and join the friendly and enthusiastic No Silicastaways. Next weekend, you'd get to see Forbes and Sienna because we're going to be down with our grandkids, and it's always a big treat for the live show to watch somebody else's grandchildren on a microphone. Thanks for listening, and stay subscribed.